I'm so proud of how far we've come. I feel like we're trying so hard to like build that bridge between like our ancestral knowledge into traditions that were from the old school and blend it with the newer kind of like trying to make it hip.
Yeah.
Welcome to Lovely Esteem. I'm Lovely, the auntie you always wanted, the sister girlfriend you didn't know you needed, honey. You got to have self-love to have self-esteem. And here we know that God don't make no junk. So we're going to sit down, talk about it, and see how we can fix it, baby. Let's do it.
Hey guys, this is Lovely with Lovely Esteem, and welcome to Healing Through Conversation. Today we have the beautiful, and I'm going to try to make sure this name is correct, Kalilah Harried. Nope, I messed it up. I knew it.
You almost had it. Kalilah Harried.
Yes. Look, I've been trying to fight this Baltimore accent for a minute now, and
Don't fight it.
I was going. But we met each other when we were doing a networking event where a lot of people who are into the mental health space, the holistic space, and it was just like a really natural pull to each other. The energy was so beautiful. And I said when I started doing this podcast that she definitely was going to be included. Even if she didn't do it the first go around, I was like, we're going to do this because I just love when I see people, one, fighting for their space, people who are very strong in their purpose, but they're all also service driven and they're also self-driven. And that's like, yeah, you don't get to be there that often. And she is the founder and owner and CEO. I said, come through, sis, of Horizon Lotus Healing and Wellness. And I was like, okay, so she's the business owner with such a sweet smile. And I was like, because she was like, she came in, it was just kind of like, what do we do here? I'm like, I don't know. We eat vegan cookies and stand next to each other.
I'll take that too.
Oh, welcome, Kalilah. I thank you so much
me.
for coming here. I really feel blessed and I love your energy. I'm like, I still remember kind of like what we were wearing and how we were trying to like stand away. Like we wanted to be around people, but we were like, what do you do after you say hello?
Yeah.
So please introduce us to yourself.
Sure. So as she said, I'm Kalilah Harried. I own Horizon Lotus Healing and Wellness. It is a holistic wellness company where we support women in transition through alignment and African-centered healing. I am a transformational coach and holistic wellness professional, offering private coaching as well as Kemetic Reiki, Kemetic Yoga, and sound healing coming in the future. I have been working with students and families for around 15 years. I started out being classroom-based in Baltimore. I'm from the DMV area, but I was classroom-based in Baltimore, and I moved on to working with student families, and that was my sort of the catalyst for my business, and working with a lot of single moms and helping them kind of process through different trials, tribulations, traumas, and things like that that not only impact them, but also impact their families. I would also say, I'd like to share that there are different certifications I hold. So, of course, Kemetic Yoga and Kemetic Reiki, but also in stress management, sound healing, grief, all kinds of things I can't remember right now. But I would say my journey has involved, being recognized for supporting students and families throughout both Baltimore City and Baltimore County and presenting to different audiences internationally on family engagement, how to not only engage parents and families for the betterment of the students, but also for seeing how we can best support you as a whole family and as a whole person. So as I mentioned, my work with them has been, that was a catalyst for this business because as deep a relationship as I can cultivate with a parent, there's still sort of a barrier because it's a school environment.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some concerns about, am I being judged because my child goes here? Do you think that this is affecting my child and my family? And you have to, in my mind, on some level, be detached for us to really go deep. Mm-hmm. And think on a soul level and on a subconscious level to really get to some of the meat and potatoes or the root of what are driving some of the behaviors or choices or feelings, thoughts, things like that you're dealing with. So that's kind of my story. I just wanted to take a leap and support in the best way that I felt I could. And I still do work with students and families in public school systems, but I definitely wanted to kind of broaden the work that I do and support, outside of that system as well.
Wonderful. And I will say that two things stood out to me. One, you talked about generational healing, which is so important.
Yes.
And because I think sometimes we get so stuck on the phrase generational trauma that you forget that you can also heal that trauma and you can pass it along. And the wonderful thing about the human mind, your genetics, your DNA, is that the same trauma that we pass down through generations, when you start healing that trauma, you start passing down those healing DNA and traits and characteristics. And then you can help with your health, you can help with your, your environment, you kind of wake up your system. And it's amazing it's always like we were talking off camera. It's amazing what your mind can do for your generation, but you don't know it yet.
Yeah, and it may show up some generations later, but I do like that you use the phrase generational healing. So I don't tend to say generational curses. I use generational patterns. Your phrase is probably one I'll adopt as well. But I wanted to touch on that too, because we're not just passing on things that need to be healed. We're passing on excellence as well. There are awesome things about our families that we don't even think about sometimes because it's not stirring up, negative issues or negative feelings or reactions. And so that's another, way to kind of incorporate the totality and a holistic approach too.
Yeah, no, wonderful. And I love also when you mentioned about helping women through trauma, because that is huge. I was having a conversation with my sister in love a couple weeks back, and we were just saying how there is certain times in your life where your children just sense something about you. And I said, think about this. I said, if you are the mom and they've been in your body for 10 months, because everybody say 9, I'm like, no, sir, 10 months. If you are lucky and blessed to be able to do these things and that's what you want to do, but 10 months, I said, but they've experienced every emotion with you, every single emotion. So your chemical imbalance, what you smell like when you're angry, when you're happy, when you're excited, when you're joyful. So you have all those things. And when your child comes out, it's not like those scents go away. You're so interconnected. So when you talk about connecting the spirit to the body and working with women through trauma, have you worked with a lot of women who were pregnant, and how did they kind of transition from the pregnancy to having a child, and did they kind of stay with the journey with you?
I haven't worked with a ton, but what I will say, as far as in my time in terms of the school system, it becomes very tough because there's a lack of support. I think the way that we operate now as families, where there isn't a village, meaning in our cultural history, going back to Africa, there were aunts. Like even people outside the family, as a village, you help to raise a child. So some of the stress and the burdens we feel, the overwhelm, not that was non-existent, but there was a lot less of that because you have somebody who is, or you have several people who are around that can support you. And so that lack of a support network can be very damaging. The loneliness that's involved, feeling like no one understands, and even when you reach out for help and people aren't available, what do you do? So that's been kind of some of the things that I've helped others work through. I also wanted to touch on Sue when you mentioned with women. I don't know if you've heard of Queen of Four, but her philosophy being like, when you heal a woman, you heal a nation. Absolutely. Like that's something that the other focus for me too, in terms of focusing on women. I work with kids, I work with men or women, but men and women, but primarily women are my demographic. So I kind of look at it through that lens as well.
Yeah, which again, like this, and this is what I mean when I say that when we met, we kind of just kept we were pitter-patting, having conversations and kind of connecting in those ways, because I think even if you are a modern thinker, you know that your ancestry plays such a huge part in how you grow in how you heal yourself, because a lot of us were taught negative healing strategies, either, the whole sit down and shut up, or, just ignore it. But then you carry all of that in your body. And then you try to figure out, well, why am I sick all the time? Or why am I tired all the time? Or, And it's like your body, it literally is the tool that you use. Like it is the while you're here on earth, this is the tool that you have. And you have to clean that tool and sharpen that tool and make sure that it's taken care of. And how do you look at, what are your practices for like self-care? So when you were talking to someone about self-care, like what are some of the practices that you use?
So definitely meditation. I personally practice I'll actually be putting a post on my social media on different types and giving tips, but I personally practice transcendental meditation. I also would say nature. Nature is a huge one for me. Just being out in nature, just sitting there, like sometimes I'll walk, sometimes I won't, but that's one, and being near water. So I have like I have a river behind where I live. So that's something that's like right there, right next to me. Journaling is another one. What I found for me when I started journaling is I used to wake up with racing thoughts. And number one, I was going to bed late on my phone, thinking of everything, you know. So of course that part wasn't healthy or helping. But what I found is when I would journal the night before, when I woke up, and then when I'm journaling, I'm getting everything out. I'm just everything it all. And so when I noticed like that was an immediate change. When I would wake up, I didn't have that anymore. Am I as consistent with journaling as I could be? Not as much, but I always can come back to it because it's like it's proof in the pudding every single time. So journaling is another one. I would say spiritual baths. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
But that's one. What's another? There are so many. I could do better with exercising, but that is another one. I noticed a change when I do that. So that's something I could be more consistent with. But those are a few that I would say. If I'm able to go to, I've gone to several like sound baths or sound healing ceremonies. I love the sound bath. Always, that is always so good. And I'm a part of like a sister circle and working with other women who are kind of doing what I do, and so they have their own events, and I attend those. So those are some of the things I would say that I do. Yeah,
and I love so. One thing about me in mental health, so I'm very transparent. So probably when I turned like 37, I had like a whole breakdown, like I cried for 3 months. I mean, and when I say cry, I don't mean like the cry when you're like, I mean that like, oh no, like, and really what it was a couple of things happening. I was unhealthy mentally, yes, and depressed, but I was also like suppressing emotion because I was raised to be very stoic. Just because of the areas that I lived in, you had to know how to carry yourself so you could make it out of those areas. And what happens when you do that for 18, 20 years is that it doesn't just go away because you're like, oh, I'm happy now. Like it shows back up sometimes in the darndest of places at the wrong time. In between that, I was going like through perimenopause was kind of starting, because now you can kind of go back and track it and be like, oh, because perimenopause plays such a large part in the breakdown of your mental health. If you're not taking care of yourself, one, because your emotions, your hormones are starting to fluctuate so much. You know, you have months when you're great, then it drops down low. Your estrogen is kind of playing with you if you aren't taking the proper vitamins, eating the proper food, and detoxing from that stress. When perimenopause kind of start to coming in and you don't know what it is, and if you have not talked about it,
that's tough,
because that's a big thing. So like when you think because you meditated that it's okay, but if you're not treating your body right, and you're stuck in stress, you're meditating just to get through the day versus you know. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm gonna cry forever. And my doctor was like, listen, I don't want to put you on medication right away. I want you to journal. She said, whenever you wake up, I just want you to write it down.
Awesome doctor. That is.
Oh no, she was top notch, amazing. She would call you and be like, so are you journaling? Because when you come back, you know, she was a nurse practitioner. So she pulled in a lot of traditional and non-traditional practices to kind of make it work. And she just recently retired and like broke my.
I was about to ask you, like, who is this? Give me the number.
But she was like, I have to retire because I want to go on my own spiritual journey. I want to, because she's taking care of all these people. Like, and when I say all these people, I mean myself, my husband, my 3 children, my mother-in-law, my mother. Like, she's taking care of my family.
Yeah.
You know? So, but she would make me journal, and the journaling didn't work as well as I would have, but we learned it was more hormonal. So then I went on medication, turned into DMX. Came off the medication because your family will not stay your family.
Oh,
you
man.
keep barking at them and fighting with them, like it's not gonna work out. But journaling was like, once I kind of understood what I was going through and that I wanted to do a more holistic approach to depression and mental health, because medication just was like, it wasn't my thing. It can work for some people, but it doesn't work for all people. I am not against medication at all, because you do what you have to do to heal, for real. But I love the fact that you talked about journaling, the sound bath. I love that water, just putting your feet on concrete or in grass. Like,
yes, grounding. Yes, that's another one.
You know, I mean, because I'm like, I know it's people like, you can put your feet on. I'm like, listen to me. You need the earth to speak to you. Like, you need it to heal some of the parts of you. Like, you need to feel like a kid. I always tell people, did you skip? Like, if you, as an adult, if you skip, you just start laughing because you're so upset.
You take care of your inner child.
But your rhythm is off. You can't, but it brings you joy for the moment.
Right.
And
it's spring too.
Yes, and it's exercise. I mean, because if you're not coordinated, I'm raising my hand, it doesn't work so well.
There was like a challenge online too with skipping, like seeing how older people, if they could still do it, and it just looked terrible. Like when you go from you can do it without doing it.
We can't. Have you done anything with yoga?
Yes. So there were a couple of, I took classes in the past. I started with maybe hatha yoga and then vinyasa, which wasn't my thing. I like gentle forms of yoga. I started doing comedic yoga in 2018, and I fell in love. I describe it as meditation for the body. It's a gentle, like a regenerative form of yoga, and the breath is a heavy incorporation with that practice as well. Something else I liked about it is, so Kemetic, the root word of Kemetic is Kemet. Kemet meaning land of the Black people, so this is ancient Egypt. And a lot of quite a few of the poses and postures align with some of the hieroglyphics that you would see on the structures that they had there. And so just that was another way for me to learn about my ancestry and our history, and seeing how these things connect. It's a spiritual practice as well. So it really is a holistic approach to and another form of meditation that I'll mention when I do my posts on my social media is body scanning, and that's a part of Kemetic yoga too. I don't know if you've heard of that. But I love that form of I love that practice, or that form of yoga as well. And that's a part of like a significant portion of time is dedicated to a body scan, where you're just checking in with each part of your body and like releasing as you go. And I wanted to go back to when you mentioned like how you grew up and having to protect yourself. Some of us may not be aware that our traumas, negative experiences, ways we've been treated, but when we weren't protected, and those things are stored in your body when you don't treat them. And you may be focused on survival first, but it's in your muscles, it's in your tissues, it's in your bones. And so when you do things like yoga and Reiki and exercising and these energy healing sound baths as well, because that affects you on a cellular level, and that's been proven by studies as well. That helps us to free and make space for and release some of those things as well. So that's another way to look at it. And we talk about mental health and therapy a lot. Sometimes people aren't ready for that, but some of these other energy healing modalities can be the access point to begin to open a space to allow that later on when you are ready. Because therapy can be very scary when you are facing stuff by yourself. And that's sort of anathema in a way to our cultural practice, because we heal in community. Just always a one-on-one thing. And so when you haven't dealt with certain things for a long time, and some of those feelings come up, and that sort of like your heart racing and you're being taken back to that place, it can be very difficult. And so if people aren't ready for that, some of these energy healing modalities can be helpful as a starting point, and then as a maintenance point after, as far as wellness. So the name of my business is Horizon Lotus Healing and Wellness. I could have just stopped at Horizon Lotus Healing. I added the wellness because healing is not just about this long, arduous process where, it's just I'm crying and I'm trying to, get rid of this and get over it. It's about joy. It's about humor. It's about play.
Yes.
It's about maintaining and having balance and wellness in your life. So that's, I combine it from that standpoint. It's not always a negative thing or this hard thing. There's joy in it. So there's creative expression and dance and singing and art. So I kind of want people to start looking at things in that way too.
Which I love. And I always try to, every chance I get, I said, I need you to understand the difference between mental health, mental illness, and mental disorder. Mental health is being able to cope and thrive in. It's about your mental well-being. It's not, because I think when we talk about mental health, it's become like, at first it was like the stigma behind it, but now it's like, oh, mental health. And I'm like, listen to me. Everybody deals with mental health from being born until you die. You're working on healing, re-injuring, healing, re-injuring, healing, re-injuring, because you're building your, like I always say, you're rebuilding your mental health toolbox. And with a lot of the coping mechanisms that we use, a lot of the exercises that we allow ourselves, a lot of the spiritual healing that we do, you put that, you need, because there are going to be times when your coach, can't be there. And when class is not in 3 a.m, when something just throws you off of your, your axis, and you have to learn how to cope with that. And I love that you do stuff where you work on like breathing techniques, always like trauma breathing, when they talk about that, because that kind of opens people up to a lot of the things that are in them that they don't want to talk about. And I love when people scream. I'm like, do it. Like, because we're told to suppress the primal part of who we are, right? When you were a little kid and you be in church, be quiet. Why are you giggling? I'm like, well, because it's funny right now, one.
Right.
As a little kid, you can't decipher between the pastor dancing or the pastor having the Holy Ghost. It doesn't kick into
it looks
you.
The same.
And we spend so much time trying to teaching people how to survive that we don't know how to thrive anymore. And in the healing, and you're going to heal until your spirit goes to wherever it's supposed to go. And then if you come back, if you believe in that, you're going to still be healing in your next life.
It reminds me of when we first met, and you were talking about like transitions.
Yes, I love it.
It's healing and rehealing, but also there's a transition to take me to another space, another level. So that's another reminder for me when you mentioned that.
And you also mentioned grief, and that is one of my sweet spots. I think that a lot of people have been taught how to get past it, but a lot of people haven't been taught how to heal from grieving and the steps of grieving, going through the different, like the different levels of grieving, allowing yourself the denial and the anger and the, bargaining and the depression and the acceptance and like working through that, because you can grieve small things so that you can accept those things. But if you never acknowledge, like, okay, so you thought you were going to have tacos and queso tonight, but you didn't, you're allowed to be like, I'm a little bit sad about that. It doesn't mean that you're ungrateful. It doesn't mean that, that you didn't appreciate wherever else you went, but like, we like you said, it lives in our body. We suppress so much that the little things that make us happy, we feel like we're supposed to be like, oh, okay. Like, I'm like, look, you give me some tacos, we might be on a date.
So that reminds me there are of course other self-care activities I do that I wouldn't think to mention, but practicing gratitude it was a big one for me. And that could be just as simple as, every day or every other day, every week, whatever, writing 3 things down that you are grateful for. The way that switches your mind, the way that allows space for, other things to come in that you are wishing for, hoping for, and praying for. It sounds so subtle and so simple, which it is, but the impact and the energy that you are putting out and drawing back in is massive. So that's, when we think about, we mentioned, praying and thanking God for things, it's for the all, whether it's large or small.
Yes.
So, it's kind of trying to grade certain things and what we should give, more attention to. Does it really matter? Like, we're thankful for all of it.
All of it. And, one of the things that I do is in the morning as I'm waking up, I always say, thank you for letting me make it through another day. Mm-hmm. And I always say, thank you, body, for waking up. Thank you. Like, I wake my body up thinking that, because, and I had to switch it because I think we all got, when you're trying to start a business, your brain is literally is stuck on business. You forget you're a person. So you wake up, you get on your phone, you check your emails, you drink your coffee, you're like, and then you like forget that you did not have to wake up. Like, it didn't have to work out this way. Or you could have woke up, sprained your neck. You can't, like, it's little things you just don't think about. And that's like one of the biggest things, learning how to be grateful and not have the stigma attached to, like, I think growing up in the neighborhood that we grew up in, we were told the word ungrateful so much. You're being ungrateful. It's like, but I know, Mom, I know you had to work really hard in order for us to have these things. I'm not ungrateful for that, but you're giving me. But what fuels you in happiness is not going to fuel me in happiness.
Right.
And like getting to that space where you start to learn how to just, you thank your feet for carrying you throughout the day, little things like that, like you said, that just eventually your body goes, oh, you like me. Well, you know what? I like you too. I like you too. And it just creates like this, a small,
like some synergy.
Just, yes. And it just makes your day go by a little bit better. Turn some music on.
Yeah. Like, I think a lot of us too, we operate from a scarcity mindset. So when you mention being told you're ungrateful, when you feel like you have to like beg for crumbs or you take whatever you can get, then some people will have that mindset of being grateful for everything, even the things that I'm not benefiting from.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to mention too that went along with what you were saying is I'm a proponent of knowing where you are at all times, meaning our emotions let us know where we are at all times. So as fine as we may think we are, if somebody just got out of a relationship and they see their ex with a new person, that painstaking, feeling you have in your heart, your emotions immediately let you know where you are. Absolutely. As much as we try to tell ourselves otherwise. So that's about self-awareness. And awareness is like everything, because then you can really zone in on where I am, acknowledging that, but just acknowledging what it is, and then moving forward from an authentic and honest place.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I think the more authentic you can be, the more that you can move in a more focused direction.
Yes, and self-awareness helps you discover your more authentic self, because a lot of us, we became our parent, or we became our guardian, or we became the area that we lived in, and we never really explored who we were. Or if we were like, I was a little bit weird, I'm not gonna lie, like I was a little bit weird. But I was quiet. So like when you're quiet, they don't kind of bother you. They just like
a little leery.
But when you are told, especially if you live in super Black areas and then you get called white girl, or you live in super white areas and then you have, it's just trying to find your space. But being comfortable with you on the inside gives you so much more awareness, and then you can feel authentic. Because I think sometimes when people hear just be authentically you, they like, well, who is that? Like, who is that? And like you said, like your intuition and your present emotions will tell you exactly where you are every day. Now, what you choose
trusting that.
Now, what you choose to ignore,
right?
I can't help you with that. But I tell people all the time, I'm like, I ignored my intuition twice in my life. Both times it was detrimental. Because my intuition, she don't just show up. Like, she chill out. She like, go ahead and live your life. When she shows up, she like, hey, this isn't right, or this is absolutely right. Because your intuition doesn't just tell you when things are wrong. It tells you when things are right.
Which way to go?
Yes, and it's like, and I'm like, and I tell people all the time, your intuition, it's innately you. It's you from split. It just tells you. It's not your trauma speaking, because that's a different, like, that's a whole different area, not your intuition. Your intuition is so embedded in you. It's why deer know how to migrate. It's why how elephants know how to walk back to, the place where they gave birth to their children. It's like, that's what your intuition does. And self-awareness. Like, when you said when your heart gets broken, I was like, oh my God.
We all know that feeling. Like, it is just,
when you
might think you're over it, or you have some healing to
right
do.
back. You're like, your arms are numb, your face, you feel like I always say it feels like people are talking because you're like,
down.
Because you're like, I cannot break down right now. Like, I cannot. And
your
face be like twerking. It's like, I'm gonna cry.
The visual of that, I'm gonna use that. Oh my gosh.
I'm like, I always say, I'm a proud Black woman. Like, I love being a woman. I love being a Black woman, and I love being an expressive Black woman, because it is, I always say, I'm like, the diversity that we have innately, just our hair by itself. By itself, but then put some color on your skin. Stop playing, just all day, every day,
all the shades.
But it's something about a Black woman when she's crying and how her nose spreads that just changes. You lose it. You're like, I cannot do this outside. And yes, you can, because sometimes people need to see you like she is not happy, or he is, and I think also, when flip side to that, I want a lot of men to understand that, like, you're allowed this same space too. You're allowed the tears. You're allowed to thrive. You can do yoga. You can do meditation. Like, sometimes they need it, not more, but just equally, because if we're trying to create these communities together, and they're kind of faded with this whole protection type role, I can't. And I said to my husband one time, I said, I don't know what it feels like as a man, a Black man, to have to protect yourself from everybody else in your family, with the threat of you not making it. But I know what it feels like to protect your children, but it's still very different.
But Black men have the right and deserve to have the full extent of the human experience, like everybody else. And so sometimes we don't recognize that or remember that. I think we're getting closer. We're starting to do that. But there are, just many ways in which they are taught, and we are taught as women, that's not something that is that's doable, or that they can afford to do. And if you are here in human form. The full extent of that experience belongs to you, and no one can take it from you. You can choose to restrict whatever you want within that space, but everything is available to you if you are open and willing to trust yourself. And so, and I'm mentioning trust yourself because the whole speaking on emotions and your intuition, being able to trust your intuition. It's one thing to have it, know and feel it, but if you don't trust it and really know the difference, is this my trauma speaking? Is this my intuition? That's, so being able to trust in yourself that you deserve everything that you were supposed to have, and there's no restriction to that. So in manifesting that, it's just important to have the right mindset to bring that in.
And I do see a lot of men trying to work on that, especially I would always say, I'm a part of Gen X, so that's why I referenced DMX, because I was like, it was just so angry all day, but it was done with love, and it was like but just watching my generation learn how to self-soothe in a healthy way. Because I think a lot of us were taught how to self-soothe in a survival way. So it doesn't mean it was always healthy. And sometimes when it comes out, it's still so aggressive because you can't spend so much of your life in one phase. And then people be like, just relax. You're like, my shoulders are up to here. Okay?
It's levels.
I'm going to need way more classes than this to talk about this. But that kind of takes us into like emotional wellness, right? And strengthening your social circles, like you were talking about, building a community. We were talking offline about, finding your people, like finding the places that make you feel comfortable, so that when you talk, you don't feel so alienated.
Right.
It's such
and being able to be vulnerable when you do.
Yeah.
That's another important part as well.
Yeah. And learning how to not laugh when you feel trauma, because that's just the biggest response. Like
that definitely can be. Yeah.
You know, you'd be like, he died. Why are you laughing? I don't know. But I feel like it's too heavy right now, and I can't cry because I don't know everybody around here.
Yeah.
Ooh, but that's one of those things, like finding a space that feels comfortable to you, even if it feels like an aggressive space, but people who make you feel comfortable with being your fullest self that you can be in the present moment.
Yeah.
You know,
definitely agree with that.
You know, one, I'm trying to, because we talked about so much so fast. What happens when you have like really
that's how it goes.
You have such a good conversation. But when I want to kind of circle back to grief, because I want to talk about dealing and coping with loss, and like some of your methods for people and how they cope with losing. And it doesn't just mean like someone that you love. It could just be losing yourself sometimes.
Yeah. Or even, I mean, the loss of a job or loss of a friend, or, you know, so we tend to think of grief in terms of death only.
Yes.
But it's really about, again, like, as you mentioned when we first met, like transitions. We are meant to go through transitions in life. These are the things that help us to grow and expand and understand things more. And most of all, understand ourselves most. I would say as far as grief, and I've, in the past few years, and this is prior to COVID, I've lost like quite a few people that were very close to me, including both of my parents. You know, for me, grief is one, like beginning to acknowledge like what you are. Number one, acknowledge where you are. Acknowledge what your support systems are. And that doesn't necessarily mean people, but what are some of the things that you have around you that are supports that you may not think about? That could be the earth, the fact that I'm able to stand and say, well, hold me up. That could be anything in nature, any you know, friends and family members, any type of the sort of the subtle background things that we tend to take for granted.
Yeah.
I do think that journaling does help. I think that you know, beginning to, when you process these types of things, being patient with yourself, giving yourself grace. I think we tend to be so hard on ourselves for a number of reasons and in a number of ways. Not allowing other people's interpretations or their experience of grief to be yours. What your process is what your process is.
Yes.
And that tends to be, you know, a big thing that comes up. You know, just I think it's a thing of constantly coming back to yourself and knowing that those, as far as death is concerned, those who have passed on are never away from you. They are always there to assist you, and when you call on them and maintain a connection with them, you'll see ways in which your life can open up. I think I saw too, I can't remember who said it. It was some celebrity, but they mentioned sometimes when somebody crosses over, they need to help you in a way that they couldn't help you on this plane. And so that can be another way to look at the support that they can give that maybe they weren't able to do with the constrictions of earth, meaning like maybe time or certain physical things. When you're in the spirit world, there, not that there's completely unbound, like there are laws in that, but
it's
way
still
more
so
open.
much open and free.
Yes. So sometimes it's just that time for you to be supported and helped in a different way that person maybe could not provide in this, you know, time and plane. So yeah.
No, I love that. And I'm really big on understanding that there's duality to life. Your past self and your future self are always coming to talk to you. Like it's trying, you know,
it's simultaneous.
It is. And I'm like, and it warns you and it runs away so fast. And like, you know, I always tell people, I'm like, you know how you'll be thinking about something and you're like, oh, that's so good. But when you go to write it down, it's gone. Like,
yeah, I hate that.
It's so gone. And I'm like, that's literally like yourself whispering back to you, like, hey, this gonna work. This isn't gonna work for us. Like, no, ignore it. Erase it off. Erase it off the board. So don't tell me to do that. You know, because we have such a hard time. And I think it's just, especially, it's the environment that we live in. We see so much carnage. We see so much harm. there's so many people who suffer from PTSD who will never be diagnosed with it because it's not a war.
Right.
And I'm like, and I tell people all the time, I said, it was an article that was done probably about now, like 7-8 years ago, was a big study. And then they did an article about it, talking about children who live in neighborhoods with like gang violence and lots of violence, and how a lot of those children kind of check off almost every single box for PTSD, but they're never diagnosed with it, because then you would have to deal with the children. You would actually, you know, but I'm like, those children become adults. And either you're going to deal with them when they're younger and they're more malleable and they are more flexible and they are willing to hear you a little bit, or you're going to deal with a 21-year-old angry, just F everybody type personality.
And hardened by their experiences.
Yes. Or the flip side, they bend at every will. They have no boundaries. They don't understand that who they are, that person has so much, they have so much honor and respect and grace that they can give themselves. That we kind of sometimes miss that. And I think in the grieving process and coping process, that letting people know that it's okay to grieve the things you lost. Like, it's okay to
deserve to.
Yes. And when we talk about healing your inner child, there's no actual way to heal your inner child, but giving yourself permission to color, to draw, to paint, to skip, to laugh, to do some of the things that you wish you would have gotten to do, it kind of is a balm for your soul.
Well, I was going to say, I'm not sure if you've heard of the term reparenting, but that would, to me, that's another approach that you can apply. I will also say, so I have my own Reiki session, so I go to someone to perform Reiki on me. And we did an inner, it's actually Natural Clarity is her name on IG. We did the inner child, like sort of sound bath, healing like session. And it was so awesome. I think when you allow space to acknowledge the things that your inner child did not receive, or ways that weren't protected, it creates a stronger connection and bond, and allows you to know what things to focus on, because those things that the fears that your inner child may be working off of are fears that you're working off of, but you don't connect it, and you can't get to the root of it. So I do think that there are some ways to like repair and heal that, but it's just something, it's focused intention that you have to have with that, and noticing what is the root of some of the ways that I act, some of the ways that I think, my approaches to things. They can go back to so far, ago that we've been disconnected from for so long. So that's another thing I would add to the inner child piece.
No. And I will say, for me, like, because there's so many people who try to be literal in mental health. Like, you can't heal. I'm like, no, we know this. We know we can't rewind time yet.
Right.
I mean, technically, if you're really in a spiritual world, yes, you can, but like, here, no. But what you do, the work that you do on yourself now, and how far you go back, is so important. I always say, and you have to take time to think about the core memories that affected you, good and bad, because you want to, like, yes, you want to work on healing the bad things, but you want to focus as much on the good things that happen. Because
stuff you're passionate about.
And that's what it made you who you are. Like, you would not have the people around you. You would not have the connection with different. I always say, some of the people who feel the most broken have just the most open spirit, because they've let go of the assumption that, like, they're like, everybody's gonna come on, let's just go, we're gonna fix everybody. But I'm like, make sure you're paying attention to yourself, because you can heal so many other people that your energy is no longer left for you.
That's a big deal. And that kind of goes back to me, like, the people pleasing that can come into play too, that some sort of that is presented as good, but you're really a detriment to yourself when you don't take care of and give attention to yourself.
I tell people, you need to be 3. Say no. A 3-year-old will tell you no in a heartbeat for everything.
Very clear on where they stand.
Very clear on boundaries. No. And we don't do that because we're, like you said, we're so used to people pleasing, but we're also used to the perception of what nice looks like. And I said, do you want to be nice, or do you want to be kind? Because those are two different actions. Kindness is in you. It's like your intuition. It's a part of that bridge. Nice is an act that you put on to try to get to another place. You're trying to kind of interchange acts with somebody. If I'm nice to you, you're going to do this for me.
Right.
And I'm like, but you got to think about this. Yes. And I'm like, what transaction do you want to make with yourself? Like, you want to be good with yourself every day, all day.
Right. Right.
You know, and kindness doesn't always mean that you're happy. It doesn't, it's like kindness and joy is the same thing. You can be going through something so detrimental.
Yeah. And
still find joy in like a flower, or find joy in a smell, or like when the breeze hits your face when you're crying, you're like, oh, like,
I feel like a hug sometimes,
you know. Or also when you find yourself laughing within grief and then you like stop it. I'm like, no, like embrace that part of you that still wants to like I always say, whenever you see fires and you see like that a flower that comes up, or the tree that kind of made it,
that regeneration.
Yes, back to nature, like we said, back to nature, which is wonderful thing. How has this field changed your life? Like, what made you get into the field, and how did it change your life?
So it's interesting. When I was in high school, I was like, well, I wanted to be everything. Growing up, I wanted to be everything. I was so indecisive. I have a lot of different interests, but I was so sure that I was going to go into psychology. And when I took my first psychology class, the professor was horrible. Like, it just was not enjoyable for me. And I took that, rather than being more open and trying again, I was just like, okay, this is not for me. However, so, you know, time moves on. I'm working in, you know, childcare and education. And when I leave so I was classroom-based for 5 years in Baltimore City. When I moved on from that and I was working with student families, that was, that particular job with Baltimore County Schools was so eye-opening. I was like, this is what I'm passionate about. And I really just enjoyed helping people. That was just like that. I'm a service-based person in that way. I love to help others. It really enriches me. And that and then it made me call back to, when I was in high school, that original purpose that I had, that I felt disconnected from, eventually now I'm back and I see where I belong. Okay. And so what I would say that this, so moving on, just working in human services, as like a family support worker and doing case management and things like that, that's how I sort of got into the field. But what it's done for me is really just opened me up and like just broken me up. And it really makes you, I would say, before entering that space in terms of human services, there was definitely like, you know, reflection and, you know, deeper understandings I was getting, you know, of myself. But when you are in it and you are reflecting things back to one another, and people are serving as a mirror for you, it becomes something totally different. And you see all the different ways that you can relate to people. Anybody I've ever worked with, literally, there's been some aspect of their life or experience that I've been able to relate to or connect with in something that I've gone through. And so it really has just broken me up and helped me to see deeper recesses of myself that I didn't know were there. Helped me in terms of my inner child, remembering like who I was as a preschooler and what my personality was like, and how certain things I've been through kind of changed and altered that. And you think that this person that you've had for, you know, 20 some odd years is you when you allow yourself to be opened up, to allow yourself to be broken, you allow that space to remember who you were. And so that I think has been the biggest like benefit for me, is just having the deeper understanding of myself and, you know, my history, my story, and how to move forward. And that's like priceless. Like nothing, only life experience can give you that. So yeah, I would say that. And it's an ongoing thing. Like, you know, that's from birth to death. That's what it's going to be. So
you said something that just like, I tell people all the time, I'm like, healing's going to hurt. It's going to hurt because you're opening wounds. You're dealing with subconscious things. Like, I was doing some research. I think I always do research at this point. But I was doing some research, and it was like between some people, 90 to 95% of your thoughts are all subconscious. So you think to yourself, I'm just profound. Like, I'm just out here. I'm just, you know, I'm big braining. I'm like, no,
right.
No, your life is, it's the reason why you blink. It's the reason why you breathe. You know, you have all these, the machines are working. They're doing their thing while you're just living your life. But when you are trying to introduce yourself to the broken version of yourself, it's going to hurt your feelings. Yeah. And you're going to go through, again, mourning when you realize.
I was just about to say that. That's grief. And like, the person that I am has been here the whole time and I never knew.
And
all the time that has passed, like the lost time you feel that you lost, it can be like heartbreaking. So you think like, what have I been doing?
It's very heartbreaking, and it feels like you've betrayed yourself.
Yes.
But then you have to always say, I'm like, that heartbreak that you feel, that betrayal that you feel, you have to understand that it also has a story and it has a purpose. Yeah. And sometimes the person that you're introducing to yourself is the person who had to save you. It had to be there. It had to be that outer strong shell to make sure you could get to this point where now it's like, okay, we can crack it open. It's going to be uncomfortable because you've never stretched before. You've never bent over. You never took a full deep breath. But now, look how beautiful you can be. We just got to work through these things.
Yeah. You know? And that's a sign of, I'm hoping I didn't forget what I was about to say. That can be a sign that when you're broken open like that, it can be a sign that that's the time that you need to, like, there are certain coping strategies that we have growing up for survival or for protection that no longer serve its purpose.
No.
And so that'll be the thing that'll break you down. Those same like responses and reactions and things or ways of being and doing what's familiar to us that work for a certain point in time. Yep. But when you're ready, when you feel that heartbreak or being broken open by, your experiences, that those coping strategies are kind of letting you know, we've served our purpose. It's time to let us go and be replaced with those that are healthier, that serve more, that enrich us more, and that actually protect us more. So that's another thing I wanted to mention too.
Yes, but that circles us back to the beginning of our conversation about generational healing, right? Because I think with like a lot of the coping that we do, it's not us coping, it's our grandmother's coping, it's our auntie's coping, our uncle's coping. Everybody teaches you how you should feel at this particular time, even if your whole spirit is averse to everything that they're saying. You get trained to feel this way.
And I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I said, and then as you get older and wiser and start hearing your own voice, you're like, who is that? Like, what's, like you feel lost.
I think people underestimate the power of energy and modeling. Being exposed to the repetition of something that somebody does and your parents, grandparents, whoever, every single day, year after year, it's ingrained in you. And it's supposed to be. So, when you're teaching your cultural customs and expectations and boundaries and things like that of what we expect of you, it's supposed to, that modeling is for that purpose, but it's a double-edged sword in a way, because the positive gets transferred, but also some of the negative things that aren't as helpful gets transferred as well. And that kind of reminds me of like when people who become parents will think that, the way my mother was, or certain things that they would say.
Yes.
I don't do that. And they find themselves doing it because it's ingrained in you. Like you've been programmed in a sense. So this is really powerful, but we don't think about that because it's so subtle at the same time.
Yes. It's like the underbelly of being alive. It's like, you always say, I've called, my mom is, like, as I went on my mental health journey, she kind of went through it because her generation was the quiet generation, right? They really weren't supposed to be seen at all. Like, I'm like, why would you have 9 kids and you want to see none of them? Like, make up your mind. You could have just said, no, I'm good with this.
Right.
But the more you learn about my grandmother's generation, you realize she didn't have a choice. Like, sometimes getting pregnant was the best thing that could have happened over all the other things they could have gone through, especially in the areas that they lived in, or, with regards to help, the resources that they had, so I as you get older, you learn to put more grace in a space where you put blame.
Yeah.
And
I even sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No,
I was going to say, like, sometimes, and this is going back to grief too, those who have had, strained relationships with their parents in particular, and especially if they pass on it, and you may be, whether they pass on or not, you may be focused on, like, why did they do the things that they did? What caused this or whatever? And why, I'm owed an apology or that type of thing. And you may or may not ever get that. But to me, sometimes you may not, and not getting that apology, just having the why, the understanding of what your parent or your grandparents or, you know, other family members around you, those who care for you, what they went through, and seeing how it connects as to why, having an understanding of why they did what they did. You may not always get an apology for certain things, but having that understanding to be able to give grace.
Yes.
Especially as you get older and you go through certain life experiences and transitions yourself, can be just as healing as that, you know, apology that you never,
I'm sorry. You like, that was not enough. That sorry didn't fix me. But that's what I was going to say. But my mom, so as I've healed in certain spots, I've healed. They've been covered over. But it's because I've gotten to a place of acceptance. I'm not saying that I condone it. I'm not saying that it is acceptable, that I've accepted these things happen. But like now I can go back and find the root. I'm at a place where I always say I'm privileged to be able to ask my mother questions and have her answer those questions, because we don't all get to be in that space.
Yeah.
But I can't ask. My father passed away when I was 21.
Okay.
And I remember when I was 22, and when he passed away, I said, that's it. Like, whatever happened, because he's not here to answer for himself.
Right.
And I think as I've gotten older, I was just having a conversation yesterday, and I said, I've gotten to a space in my life in the last like 10 years when I had to realize my father probably asked the same questions that I've asked about his father, who was not in his life as well. So all he did was he created the same life that he lived because that's all he knew.
Right.
And, you know, and also understanding that although we all want to feel special, we were not always in their plans. We weren't always a happy birth. It wasn't always a happy moment for them. And we think that instinctually they're going to love us.
Yeah.
Because you saw my baby face. Why would you not love that? And it's like,
right.
I can't love me properly. So I was not expected this. I'm like, but I always say exceptions are, you could have said, no, I'm not going to sleep with you. You
could have put some thought into this.
But no, seriously, like, it's one of those things where we take in the character, we take on the traits and characteristics of our family. And sometimes genetically, it's like how you may have never met your mom or your dad, but then somebody will be like, oh my God, you did the same thing as your mom.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're like, what did I do? Because especially if you are in a place where maybe you lost them so early and you didn't have that relationship, you tend to hold on to those things so strongly. But I'm like, I am my mother's child. Like, I try not to be my mom, and she falls out of my every day. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
You know, but yeah, so I mean, and I say, I'm like, being able to ask them questions, or also, like you said, being able to understand the why, not that it's acceptable or that you need to like always forgive, because I think people forget that forgiveness is for yourself, and so that you can create more space to be able to take in some of that positive energy, and some of that, you can get rid of some of that hatred. Because when people say hate, I'm like, you need to realize, in order for you to hate something so viscerally, you had to love it. You had to have, it's the opposite of. And I said, so like, you have to learn how to attach the feeling. You could have disdain for something, you could dislike something, but when you say hate, it means that you had a love, you had something that was connected to that thing, and it broke you. And now you're like, oh no.
Right. You don't know how to cope with that.
Yeah. And
yeah, that having the why is just giving that context that you worried about for so long. We carry these questions with us for so many years. And you know, there are things that can also be revealed you know, after someone's death too. So even if they're not living, like, there are synchronicities and things that, you know, different spirit guides are sharing with us, that our ancestors are sharing with us, that can help fill in those gaps too, even if they're not here.
I love my ancestors. I'm like, listen, I'm like, this car got in front of me and it's moving slow. Are you telling me that I'm not supposed to go around this car because something about to happen? And it depends. I'd be like, wait, I give myself, like, honestly, like 20 seconds of like,
that's good. Right.
But I wasn't like that when I was younger. You know, when you're younger, you're like,
ripping and running. Yeah.
You know, but as I've gotten older, and honestly, because I realized how important time is, like, it's moving by so fast. I'm like, what do you mean kids are going back to school? I mean, my kids not, because But I'm like, they're going back to school. The year just started. It's already September, technically, you know, like,
I have no idea where this whole year is gone. Like,
you know what I mean? But then, like, as you get older, you start to realize how important time is, and you stop rushing around. And it made me appreciate what synergy made me appreciate the older women that I used to think were so mean. I now can look at it and realize that they were trying to capture time. They were trying to reintroduce themselves to themselves.
Yeah.
Because if you had kids at an early age, or you had trauma at an early age, it changes who you are. It it changes your mind. It changes how you develop. It changes how you accept disease, the whole nine. And I think that your concept of really working on the body and the spirit and grounding, and understanding that there's so much healing that your body can do by itself, but you have to give it permission to do that. I think that was like one of the things that like really drew me to you, because I was like, she's really just out here to sit down. We're gonna breathe for the next hour. I was like, if you can get a person to sit down and breathe for 5 minutes. I've had people who like, we do breathing exercise. They're like, I don't like this. I'm thinking. I'm like, you're going to think.
Right. That's the part. The thoughts come up. It's not a bad thing. Even with meditation, I mean, just, if you have like whatever form you do, if you have like a mantra or you're paying attention to your breath, you're giving your mind something to hold on to be able to go into the subconscious level and be in that whole playground, and be able to receive certain messages or certain understandings and clarities that you maybe didn't have before. So it's a part of the process. And not even myself, I mean, well, I'll say this, because I still, sometimes I get on myself about thoughts too, but it also lets you know where you are again. So like, if I have a lot of thoughts going on, I know at this, something's going on.
Yes.
If I have too many and maybe I'm overstressed or overburdened or overwhelmed, and I need to give more intentional focus, maybe meditate more than what I normally do. So that's just knowing where you are and be able to acknowledge that without judging yourself, without shaming yourself, but just literally, I notice this. I'm noticing this feeling right now. I'm noticing this reaction right now. I'm noticing this energy coming up that comes up only at these particular times. So just being aware, going back to awareness again.
Absolutely. And I love what you said, because you can meditate as many times in a day as you want to. It's not going to hurt you. You can because I think like sometimes we like, I only meditate in the morning. Well, if you're still stressed out by the afternoon, sometimes you got to go back in there, and you may have days where you feel like you don't need to meditate. But
it's a standard practice as far as transcendental meditation. You do it 2 times a day, so morning and like an afternoon or evening too. So that's a practice that may be helpful for some people. To make that a standard, so it's 24 hours in a day. Like it's a long stretch.
It's a long.
Give yourself breathe. Like
I love that. She said it's gonna be a long day. Okay, you're gonna need to re-up.
You don't have to power through. Like slow down and breathe. You're gonna be okay.
You're gonna have to re-up, babes. You're gonna have to come, because you might go to work and realize I'm not as calm as I thought I was. I'm like, I tell people I can meditate driving down the road, like. Just because I've done it now for like maybe like the past like 7 years of learning how to like calm my spirit down. A lot of breathing work, a lot of breath work. Because my anxiety used to just be like, I'm like just through the roof. And it's like, what am I anxious about? And if I'm anxious, did it happen? Like, does it exist? Because usually
we'll dream up whatever.
We good at it. I'm like, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can come up with some stuff that's
vivid imagination.
And I used to say all the time, like, when you're hurt, when you have extreme emotions, you have to pay attention to yourself. Because those extreme emotions, back to heartbreak, when you're going through like a bad breakup, be it platonic or romantic, the amount of negative space that you open up, because like, again, like you said before, it's ripping another part of you. And it's teaching you, like, failures are lessons. But those lessons, sometimes it feels like you just got a baby boo-boo, like a little hurt on your knee. Other times you're like, I had open heart surgery.
Right.
but it's just one of those things where you have to figure out what works well for you. And that's why I tell people, if you have to get up and dance, if you have to get up and move your body, if you need to turn up the song, whatever works for you that helps you get to a space where you can cope and then deal with it. That's the big, all the stuff that we talking about today will not help you if you don't deal with the problem.
Right.
You know,
deal with the root of what it is at some point.
And
so I mean, there's the immediate coping that happens in the midst of that strong emotion, but you got to return to, okay, well, what was driving this?
Yes.
What stone have I left unturned that I can free myself from?
Yes.
So a lot of us are willing to stay, trapped or stuck because of the unfamiliar. We don't know what it looks like on the other side of healing. We don't know what it feels like. It's hard to have a vision for that. So being able to trust in yourself that we have everything we need within us. And it may take someone like me or like you to help guide and be a way shower or hold your hand and support, but you have everything that you need at every moment in time. You're not left alone. So everyone is capable, period.
She said, put that dot, there you go. There you go. And because I love that, because we spend so much time giving excuses for reasons why we're not going to heal. And what most of us need to realize is that we get stuck in a cycle. So if you're used to drama and trauma and, if you're used to always having to survive, it is very hard to see somebody thriving and understand that life. It feels foreign. It feels like you faking it. Like you're not, and it's like, today I might be, but tomorrow I might really be thriving. Like,
well, the brain works on familiarity. So as a means of protection, it's going to lead you to what you are familiar with. So it takes that strength to kind of chip away at what you're familiar with and trying these new strategies that ultimately over time and being consistent with them will help you and to help kind of create new neural pathways and strategies and techniques that will help you to maintain that once you get to the other side as well.
Like this is what I'm talking about. It's like, I promised myself, I was like, we are going to stick with our time because, it's like funny because both of us said off camera that we're so introverted, but it's until we hit a space that we love. And then it's like,
I'll be a total extrovert depending on the environment, the situation, people I'm around. It'll totally, you would never think that. But I have my default and then I have my other ways.
Yes, where I'm like, but I feel like that's us for real.
Yeah.
But it's like, but you got to find a safe space where vulnerability is accepted, where like your flaws things that you think are flaws are just, it's comfort for other people. Because that we've all been taught to be like these perfect people, that everything has to be symmetrical. And I'm like, have you looked at nature? It's some things happening out there that I'm like, I do not want to be that. I do not want to be an aardvark. Like, I just don't want to be that.
Right.
It just feels like the anteater got a really weird, like somebody just threw some stuff out there and was like, okay.
This works.
But can you tell everybody again where they can find you on social media as well?
Yeah, so my website is www.horizonlotus.com. You can learn more about me, about my services, my approach to healing and wellness. You can find me at Horizon Lotus on all platforms. So that's TikTok, IG, Facebook, and Twitter. YouTube doesn't have any content, but that's at Horizon Lotus with the number 1. But the other platforms are like up to date, and you can follow wherever you're most comfortable on more than one.
Follow me everywhere.
Right.
Just click.
All of it.
We help you, help us. That's what I'm trying
to do. We help each other.
I would love to, we could do like a biannual little situation. Just catch up and see how they go. I plan on us going to do some stuff, some networking. I definitely want to come to some of your classes or some of the community events that you are doing, because I just love being around people who are excited about working on themselves and and they're comfortable with being afraid, like, because that's what healing is. You're afraid all the time. You're like,
you don't know what's going on.
You're like,
the next
okay.
step is like uncertain. You don't know.
You don't know, but you still show up every day, right? That's what we do. We show
And
up
I think,
every day.
that's the benefit of combining, the coaching, or for those who are licensed professionals, the talk therapy with the energy healing. It's not one or the other, it's both. And so I'm glad to see, like, as far as in the mental health field, there are particularly a lot of Black practitioners and professionals that I see that are combining both, whereas, the alternative therapies would have never been considered legitimate, but these are from our ancestors. Like it was here before the talk therapy, it was here before the licensing. It was, so you have to take that holistic approach is really important.
It's so important. And remember, sometimes you're going to have to pay to get to where you want to be. Because I think that, health insurance is not going to always cover some of the alternative. I'm like, you don't want me to feel better. Like, I thought that was the whole reason I was paying for health insurance, but that's a whole
People
different
can check the employee plans that their companies offer. They may cover that.
Yeah, I know the EAP does cover. I'm like, when you get into the
employee assistance program, that's what I meant.
They absolutely get into a lot of that space, and I will tell you that I work in corporate America in the daytime, and they are really getting to it's because our generation is starting to come in. And and the millennials are starting to come in, and they're like, "Hey, I need a chill environment because you're messing up my life." And it's changing the face of the office. Like when they say work-life balance, they really mean like life, work balance out. So I was like, we'll see what happens, because you leave it up to me, I'd be talking about mental health all day.
Exactly. Same here.
But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I had so much fun. I was so excited when you reached out.
I'm like, I told you, I was like, she is gonna get it. She's gonna be like, who is this lady and why she keep following me?
No, never.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. I really enjoyed this.
Same here. Thank you so much.
You too, doll. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you found some healing, connection, and joy. Until next time, bye, loves.